Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to my Sims 4 speedbuilding video, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. So in today's video I'm going to build in the world of Sulani, which is the world that we got from the expansion pack The Sims 4 Island Living, and I'm going to be building a tropical family home. So this house ends up having 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, and it's built on a 30 by 20 lot. Now, this week, I was just really in the mood. I just really fancied sitting down and building something in the world of Sulani, but make it more a little bit tropical. Because the thing is, I've done a handful of builds in the world of Sulani so far, and in the past, I seem to go towards a little bit more of like a luxury Maldives, kind of like dream honeymoon destination kind of style, which don't get me wrong, beautiful, love it. But I feel like I really need to sit down and build some more almost like tropical and true to the architectural style in this world already. Because if you was looking in this neighbourhood, you might notice there's all these little buildings kind of like dotted about, and they're like bright yellow, bright orange. They've got all these funky coloured roofs and they are just so pretty, and I just never seem to build houses in this world in this style. And so I thought, well, this week I'm going to sit down and do exactly that, and yeah, I really hope you guys like it. But anyway, moving on from that and getting on and talking a little bit more about the build itself and also what I'm doing right now. So as you can see, I've pretty much already built the whole main structure of the house. I've already done for what I thought was going to be the wallpapering and the roofing, and I'm currently just coming in and placing down some columns at the front of the build and also adding in some spandrels. Now, I do want to mention, when I was building this, I was looking at a picture that I found on Pinterest. I will find the picture for you and I'll pop it up on the screen now so you can have a little look. Now, I just saw this on Pinterest and just instantly just fell in love with it and just wanted to recreate it in the game. It is just so beautiful, this picture. The landscaping, the colour scheme, the front entrance into the house, I was just in love. And so initially, coming into this build, I thought this house was going to end up looking like that. It doesn't, because I had a bit of a faff when it came around to figuring out the colour scheme. Because like I said, it's got this beautiful like white panelling currently, it's got this blue roof, it's very, what I feel like is true to Sulani. Like, I feel like this would blend in so seamlessly into this world, and in particular, in this particular neighbourhood. But when it came around to figuring out the doors and the windows, you'll see I had a bit of a nightmare. Like, I was placing down all these different windows and doors, and to me, when I was zooming out, where I'd used this one particular panelling of the wood wallpaper, I just felt like I couldn't see the windows, and so I end up having a bit of a faff. You see that I end up changing it, but currently you can see that I'm coming in and figuring out the floor plan of this house. Now, I am such a big fan of the floor plan for this house, and in particular the kitchen. Now, the thing is, the way that I built this house, it's quite a decent size. Like I said, it's got 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It does also end up having a little greenhouse as well, which of course you could transform into something else if you fancy. But the way that I built this house structurally, it was actually quite big. And for the idea that I've got for the Sims family that are going to be living in this house, I didn't want them to be living in like a Sulani mansion. I wanted it to be a little bit more snug on the inside. And so when it came around to figuring out the floor plan, I kind of purposely placed the kitchen in a bit of a weird position, in a sense of I could have placed it into a bigger room, but I loved the idea of having like a smaller kitchen, and then there's a little door which goes out into the greenhouse. And I was thinking that the Sims that live in this house maybe grow all their own fruit and vegetables, or maybe they've got like a little herb garden or like a herb greenhouse in their little greenhouse, and they can go into there and just like pick all their fruit and vegetables and put it into their ingredients for their cooking. I just loved the idea of that. And so once I figured out where the kitchen was going to go and everything, the rest of the house kind of like mapped out really nicely. But currently you can see that I have now moved back to the exterior of the build, and this is where I come in and have a bit of a faff when it comes round to figuring out what doors and windows I was going to use. Now, I don't show you all of it because honestly there must have been like a 10-15 minute clip of me going through every single window in the game trying to figure out which window I was going to use. Because the thing is, I was placing down windows, but when I was placing down the windows that I was placing down, that sounds like gibberish, but when I was placing them down, they were just blending into the initial wallpapering of the house where I used a white paneling. And so initially I placed down white ones. I then tried to place down brown ones, but then when I was zooming out, the brown looked a bit strange. I then decided, oh, why don't I change the paneling to be maybe like a nice creamy kind of colour, which that is what it currently is right now, but bear with me, it changed in a second. Just because I felt like the cream, again, I love it, it's beautiful, it's really pretty, but I felt like it wasn't as Sulani as I wanted to make this house. Like I said, I just really wanted it to try and blend in with the environment and all the different surroundings. And so even though the cream wallpaper was really pretty, I do end up changing it one more time, and it it ends up being a really nice, almost like orangey wood tone. And so yeah, once I did that, I ended up placing down some more flowers onto the build, and the flowers I used are red, and it comes together really nicely in the end. But it was a bit of a process to get to there. But either way, moving over, as you would have just seen, I did place down a fireplace, or a chimney that looks like it's meant to have a fireplace on the inside of this house. I want to mention there is no fireplace on the inside of this building, just because the world of Sulani, it's well out here. Like, you don't need a fireplace. You don't really need central heating. I imagine that these windows are consistently open anyway. But the way that the roofing almost matched up together, I wanted there to be some sort of like roof line going over into the greenhouse. But then I had two different heights of the roof on the front portion of the build, then the exterior of the build. And they were kind of like overlapping weirdly. And so a fun little trick that I do whenever this kind of occurs in a build is that sometimes I will just plop down either like an extra bump out or a chimney. That way you can kind of disguise the weird overlap between the roof pieces, and then on the inside I make it so that is where the stove is, and I place down like a little stove hood, and I'm thinking when the Sims family do their cooking, it goes out into the chimney, and like that's how the chimney is there. It sounds silly, but I just wanted there to be something to kind of like break up them two roof pieces. But either way, over here, as you can see, I've pretty much now figured out the whole colour scheme for this build. This is the end colour scheme that I end up going for. I don't change it anymore, but I'm currently just coming in and placing down some coral onto the ocean floor. Now, I love the way that this coral looks underneath, almost like the foundation stilts of this house. I just feel like it blends in so naturally to the environment. You can see on the exterior of the lot, in kind of like the surrounding environment, there is already coral reef. And so when it came around to figuring out what I was actually going to place down onto the floor, for me, it was a bit of a no-brainer. And so I placed down a few pieces of this live edit coral. The one that I've used is from the Island Living expansion pack. I then also placed down some seaweed. I placed down some little stepping stones. Tried to make it feel very cutesy. But when it came around to playtesting, I had such a nightmare because my Sims, for some reason, they couldn't sit on the little boat that I placed down, and they couldn't sit down on the jet ski. And for ages, I was really hoping it wasn't the coral reef. But for some reason, this time round, the coral reef was making it so my Sims couldn't interact with the boat or the jet ski. And at first, I just thought the game was just having one of its weird moments, because the thing is, I've done this thing before in the past in builds in the world of Sulani where I've had some sort of like stilted foundation, and then I've merged in coral reef and seaweed and just loads of bits and bobs underneath it. And from my memory, I thought it was fine, but I then remembered previously when I've done this, I've only ever really placed down live edit boats that your Sims can't actually interact with, because if you've got the live edit menu activated in your game, there is so many different little boats that you can place down into your build. Your Sims can't interact with them, but they're pretty. And so normally whenever I build in the world of Sulani, I'll more so go towards them kind of vehicles or them kind of boats. But for this household, I wanted them to actually have a boat, and so where the boat was something that your Sims could interact with, I then just found that there was a whole can of problems, and in the end I basically ended up having to delete the coral reef, but then I tried to make it look like there was just a bunch of seaweed underneath it. I did just want to mention that just in case you do notice any differences in the screenshots. But yeah, there is a little boat that your Sims can ride, and then there is also a jet ski. But as well as that, over here I've placed down a few different sun lounges, and then also a little closed umbrella. The umbrella, if you're curious, is from the My Wedding Stories, but you can find it in the live edit menu. I used it in a red swatch because I was kind of going for a bit of a red colour scheme on the exterior to kind of like tie in nicely with the orange. So we had the orange wallpaper, but then I had like red flowers growing up the build, and then the little boat is red and the jet ski is red, and then I placed down like a little red brolly, and I tried to pair the red quite nicely. But as well as that, I placed down a woohoo blanket, which this, by the way, I have got a whole like storyline for the Sims that can be living now. I'll tell you about that in a second, but it's not really appropriate for a woohoo blanket because there is children in this household. But your Sims, if you don't know, your Sims can also sit on that blanket and stargaze and cuddle, and if they want to, they can have a picnic. I just thought, how darling would that be, being on like a nice little decking area, sitting down of an evening and having like a little picnic as a family. And so yeah, I placed that down there. I then also placed down some like fisherman decorations. I placed down some buoys is what I think they got. Not like a buoy, like buoys, you know, like ones that float in the ocean. I placed some of them. The ones that I use are from the Cats and Dogs expansion pack. You can find them in the live edit menu. And then I also placed down some crates of maybe like fishing equipment and like a little fishing rod and just loads of little random bits and bobs, loads of different stuff. But over here, as you can see, I'm currently just coming in and decorating the outside dining table. Now, what I'm currently doing, I know it looks a little bit weird, but let me explain my thought process. Basically, we're building the world of Sulani, and if you've ever got your Sims to live in this world, you might be familiar of the big sense of community almost. Like Sims would randomly just pop over with a plate of food and be like, we've got some extra food, do you want to have some servings? Or sometimes your neighbours will come around for a chit chat. Like there is a big sense of community in this world, and I'm building this house in my save file, by the way. I don't think I mentioned this, but I imagine that the Sims that live in this house in particular are a massive part of the community. They're always offering their neighbours and just other people that live in this world free food, and often have dinner parties. And so when I was coming in and decorating the exterior table, I was thinking, well, it's quite a big table, probably plates up quite a big amount of food onto the table itself. Why not try and make it look like there's some sort of lazy Susan in the middle of the table, so when Sims are sitting there and eating dinner of night time, they can kind of like spin the lazy Susan around and get like all these different servings of all these different types of food. Which, if you're unfamiliar with what a lazy Susan is, by the way, which I actually didn't know what a lazy Susan was until about 2 years ago, but a lazy Susan is pretty much something that you can place down onto either like your dining room table, your kitchen table, and say for example, you're having dinner with your mates and you say, oh, could you pass me, I don't know, tomato sauce or something, instead of them having to like angle over the table and like try and pass it to you, a lazy Susan is something that you can pop something onto and it basically just spins and it just makes it really easy. You can also place them down into the inside of your kitchen cupboards. I say kitchen, could be bathroom. I've got one in my kitchen cupboard, but it's just really handy for like a storage solution. But yeah, I was thinking where there's just such a big sense of community, it might be nice at the dinner parties, instead of having to like always reach over each other's plates and stuff, to have like a little pretend lazy Susan. And so that was what that was. But then as well as that, this like upper porch bit, I ended up placing down like a nice little barbecue area, as well as like a nice outdoor like bonfire situation. I placed down some armchairs around it, which the armchairs that I've used are from the Island Living expansion pack, and I must have used this one particular armchair about 20 times in this build, no exaggeration, because it is just so perfect for a build in this world. It does make sense, it's from the Island Living DLC, but I placed down, yeah, like a nice little bonfire area. Sims of an evening can sit out there and put the fire on. I then also placed down a few different like vases, however you want to say it, as decoration. Also placed down a ladder, which in my head I was thinking maybe if they want to get to the solar panels on the roof, because I don't know if you would have noticed, but this house does have solar panels, because I imagine that they're very eco-friendly conscious, and they care about the environment. They want Sulani to be beautiful, and you know, they want it to be healthy in this world, and so I feel like they try and minimise their electricity and stuff. But as well as that, I placed down like a nice little washing line and a wash tub. And then on the front portion of the build, I was really struggling by this point, because I feel like everything that I would want to have on the exterior of this build, I had already placed down into like the back garden area. And so on the front porch, I ended up placing down a few different planters as well as a chess table. But currently, as you can see, I'm just coming in and doing a little bit of front landscaping. I do also end up placing down the bonfire, or like the grand barbecue pit on the front porch of the build as well, because it felt weird placing that down onto like the upper decking bit. But I placed it down at the front of the build on the little sandy area, as well as a nice little swing set. But whilst I'm currently doing this, I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to finally tell you about the Sims that I designed this house for, and the Sims that are going to be living in this house, my save file. So I designed this house for the Kialoha family, which is a pre-existing family in the world of Sulani. Now, the household consists of 4 members. We have a mum called Liliana, we have a dad called Makawa, we have their little daughter, which is called Nani, I believe is how you pronounce her name, and then there is this random teenager that lives with him called Dwayne, right? And previously, I thought that was their child. Like, I thought Dwayne was like their teenager. It's not. He's literally a random sim. There is no family relation to the mum and dad to this random teenager that lives in this house. And previously, you might have seen it, a few months ago, I built a house in the world of Sulani on their original lot when you enter a brand new save file, and I didn't necessarily build it for my save, but I kind of designed the rooms for if you wanted that family to live there. There was like a toddler room, there was kind of like a teenager room, and so if you fancied, you could make that family live in that house. But since then, even though I love that build dearly, I have decided that I wanted to have a bit of a different approach for this neighbourhood in the world, and so I wanted to build their house and design it on the inside to be a little bit more like boho islandy, if that makes any sense whatsoever. You'll see as we go throughout the build, but I tried to make this house a little bit more rough around the edges. You know, it's not got perfect wallpaper. You can see I've now moved on to the inside. The wallpaper throughout the majority of this house is this panelling that looks like it's got all these different tears around it, but it looks like a little bit old, it looks a little bit weathered, and I feel like this suits the world of Sulani so much better than the one that I previously built for them. But along with the video that I posted, someone left a comment about a storyline idea that they do in their own personal like households and what they do whenever they play with this family, and I really hope you don't mind, but I've kind of taken inspiration from your comment and tried to implement it into this family. Now, the comment itself was from someone called CraftGamer09, and they basically said that for the teenager, they pretend that they are a nephew on the mum's side, and he lives with them because his mum is a mermaid, and his mum lives underwater, and so because his mum is, you know, in the coral reefs and he's not, he hasn't really got anywhere to stay, and so he's basically the nephew of this household. And I was thinking that this is such a lovely storyline idea, and so I've kind of taken parts of that and almost expanded it on a way. And I was thinking every like, I don't know, 2-3 months or something, the mum of Dwayne just randomly pops in, and so that is where the 4th bedroom in this house, it kind of comes into play. It's kind of like a spare little bedroom for the mermaid mum or the mermaid auntie. Now, like I mentioned, this mermaid is related on the mum side. So Liliana, the mum of this household, she is the sister of this mermaid auntie. I don't know what her name's going to be yet, so if you've got any suggestions, let me know, but I'm going to like fully flesh her out. I'm going to create her, I'm going to give her all different relationships and skills and stuff, but I imagine that she's related on the mum side. And I was also thinking that maybe Liliana herself used to be a mermaid, but she fell in love with her husband, Makawa, who is the dad of this household, and basically her family, her mermaid family, gave her an ultimatum of you can either be with Makawa or you can be a mermaid. You can't have the best of both worlds. Kind of gave her a bit of an ultimatum, a little bit like if you've ever seen Little Mermaid, that kind of situation. And so I imagine that where Liliana's family didn't like the idea of her being with a normal human, because Makawa, the dad of this household, is just a regular bloke, he's not an occult in any way, I imagine that she decided that she wanted to choose love rather than being a mermaid. And so maybe her family are like really powerful and basically got rid of all of her mermaid skills, and now she's just like a regular sim that has legs when she goes swimming. But I imagine that Liliana herself holds such a massive grudge over her sister because she probably loved being a mermaid, but she just loved her husband a little bit more, which I just think is so sweet. But in terms of a little bit more backstory to Dwayne, now I was thinking that Dwayne used to live with his dad, who also, by the way, was a human. I imagine that maybe the mermaid mum, Dwayne's mum, I imagine that maybe she had a one-night stand or something, and she fell pregnant and she had this baby. But I'm not sure how much you play with mermaids, but if you have a human sim and a mermaid sim, it's a 50-50 chance whether they're going to be a mermaid or not. I imagine that sadly, Dwayne didn't end up being a mermaid or a merman. What's it called? I don't know. But either way, he ain't got a fin. He has got legs when he goes swimming. But I imagine that he used to live with his dad. And I imagine that his dad used to be a fisherman who sadly passed away. And so the mermaid mum found this out and basically asked her sister Liliana if she could look after Dwayne for a little bit until she sorts something out. I was thinking this was maybe a few years ago or something. It said, you know, blah blah has just passed away, could you look after Dwayne? I currently live in the coral reef, I ain't got really a house for him right now, could you look after him? And that was years ago. She never sorted anything out, and so now Dwayne just fully lives with his household and is fully settled in. I also really like the idea of one day Dwayne wanting to grow up and become a fisherman just like his dad, because all the different fishing equipment that I placed outside, by the way, I don't think that is Makawa, the dad of this household, it only is fishing equipment because he is a child of the ocean. He's got that trait, which I'm not sure if you've ever played with that trait, but I have been playing with that trait recently, and I found out that Sims feel guilty when they go fishing if they have a child of the island trait. And so I was thinking, well, the fishing equipment can't really be his because, and also that makes no sense because when you go into a brand new safe bath, by the way, he's got a few skill points in fishing. So I don't know, Sims team probably didn't think that through, but either way, I imagine that all the fishing equipment that is outside on the dock is Dwayne's dad, and when he passed away, he loved his dad dearly, and maybe he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps or something, and so all the fishing equipment is his dad's old stuff. He's currently a lifeguard, he's a teenager, but I imagine one day he wants to go up and follow in his dad's footsteps. But that is pretty much the storyline that I've got for this household. I'm just so in love with it, and again, this came from a comment from one of my recent videos a few months ago, and I'm just so happy that Craft Gamer 09 left this comment, because it just got my mind just thinking about all these different possibilities, and it just made it so much fun. And so if you are watching this, thank you so much for your comment, and I really hope you don't mind that I've kind of like taken that comment and kind of like adapted it to fit this family for my save file. But either way, moving over, I will speak more about the family when we move on into their different bedrooms, but I do currently want to speak about what I'm doing right now, which is decorating the kitchen. So in here, I am absolutely obsessed with the way that this kitchen came together and the way it turned out. It just feels so, I want to say organic, but I hope you know what I mean by like that. Like it's not a fully complete kitchen in the sense of all the bowls and plates that I purposely placed down on these little shelving units. I tried to make it look like they were odd pieces. I imagine that this family, they ain't popped to the shops and got like a complete china set. I imagine that all the different bowls and plates and mugs that they've got are just like older stuff that has maybe been passed down from them, or maybe if we had pottery in the game, one of the Sims made it in this household. That is something that I really want to see in The Sims 4. If our Sims could actually make stuff from clay, that would just be so much fun. I feel like that will come in like a hobbies pack, which I am so desperate for in this game. But yeah, in the kitchen, I went for a very like rustic kind of feel. I went for the counters that we got from the Horse Ranch expansion pack. I then decided to pair it with a base game fridge, and then the oven that I use in that room is from the Cottage Living DLC. I then did also place down like a little stove top on top of the oven situation, because that is where on the exterior of the chimney is, and so I imagine all the different like fumes and smoke and stuff that comes off the oven would kind of go out into the chimney. But I also placed down like a little retro coffee station in there. To be fair, it doesn't really fit having a coffee station in the kitchen for the idea that I had for these Sims anyway. Like I imagine they would live off the grid. They're very like organic, they're very like everything they eat they grow themselves kind of situation. But I like the idea just for gameplay purposes to have a coffee machine, because if your Sims are a little bit tired and they've got to go to work, it's just really handy to have one. And so yeah, place down like a little coffee machine in there, and then also place down a hot pot thing where your Sims can make like steamed rice and stuff. But just off the kitchen, there is a tiny little utility room. Now the utility room is very much just, there's a washing machine in there, there's a tumble dryer. I think I placed down a Hoover or a vacuum into the corner, and then also like an ironing board onto the wall, and then some, what I was imagining, shelves for like extra blankets or extra pillows and stuff. There is also a washing line and a wash tub outside. I was more so thinking that the Sims would prefer to use the outside stuff, but maybe if they haven't collected enough power over the duration of a day and they need to put a load of washing on, it might just be quite handy to have a washing machine and a tumble dryer on the inside. But then just off the kitchen, as you would have seen, it goes into the greenhouse, which it just looks so beautiful, and just love the screenshots of the kitchen going into the greenhouse. It's just so pretty. But in the greenhouse, I placed down a few different planters, and I have pre-planted them. If you're curious, I pre-planted them with all different herbs, which I more so chose herbs because I wanted there to be some sort of like little herb garden in there. But if you want to, you can definitely delete them and replace them with your own fruit and vegetables. I'm also planted them because I wanted to make sure that they would actually function for gameplay and you wouldn't run into any problems. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on and I've started decorating the dining room. So in here, I had a bit of an issue when it came around to figuring out what dining room table and chairs that I wanted to go for. You would have seen I started this room by basically plonking out loads of different chairs that I thought that I might want to potentially use, and then I tried to match it with a table. Initially I wanted to go for a circular table because I really like the look of a circular table in the middle of a dining room, but I had a circular table on the exterior and I didn't want to have two circle tables in this house, and so I decided to opt for this base game one, which I will use in like a darker wood. But if you look at the wood, it looks a little bit more weathered. It looks like it's been chipped in a few different areas and stuff. But then when it came around to figuring out the chairs, I just had such a nightmare. And the ones that I've currently picked, now looking back on it, they're actually alright. They go with the room, but I didn't like them when I was filming, and so you will see shortly I do decide to switch them chairs out. The ones that I've currently used, if you're curious, they are from the Seasons DLC, but I end up deleting them and then replacing them with some that we got from the For Rent expansion pack. But in here, as you can see, I'm currently just faffing about with these curtains. I also end up deleting them. I don't know what was going on with this dining room, but I wanted it to look a particular way in my head, and the way that I was initially decorating it, it just wasn't that vision that I was thinking of, and so I do end up deleting the curtains. But in the dining room area, we have like a little bookcase, we have like a little side table. By the way, you might see me pull out all these different rooms throughout the duration of this build, and it's got all these different buried treasure and then also seashells in them. Now they are stuff that your Sims can find in and around the world of Sulani, but weirdly you can't actually find them from the debug cheat if you've got the bit of build buy mod installed into your game. And so basically what I did once upon a time is I went into my game and I basically collected the seashells, put them into a little room, and then I saved them to my library. So then that way when I'm building I can just plonk them out, pick out which seashells that I want, and then delete the room. If you have noticed that is basically what I'm doing. But yeah, I placed down like different necklaces that your Sims can find if they go scuba diving. I also placed down these little like, I think they're meant to be like hexagon shaped things. It's like buried treasure that your Sims can find in the world of Sulani, and just different seashells that your Sims can find if they ever go searching for them in the sand. But now moving over, I've now moved on into the sitting room, or like the living room. I am utterly obsessed with the way that this room came together and the way it turned out. But I love this build so much, and in particular I feel like this might be my favourite room. But then saying that, I love the kitchen, but then I also love the bedrooms as well. I actually can't choose when it comes around to doing this build, my favourite room. But in here I end up using 2 different sofas, or 2 different love seats, and then pairing it with this Island Living armchair. Now the sofa that I've used that's got the blue pillars on, that is a sofa that we got from the movie Hangout stuff pack, which is a stuff pack that came out forever ago, and you wouldn't even think that that beautiful swatch of that sofa exists, because the little preview image of this sofa is in some bizarre vibrant colours, and you wouldn't think there's a neutral in there. There is some like questionable swatches that you could probably try and make work, but yeah, I decided to use this sofa in the neutral swatch with some blue pillows, and it's just so pretty. But then I decided to pair it with an odd love seat. I didn't want to have 2 matching ones because I didn't want this house to be matchy. Like I said, I imagined that this household, maybe half of their bowls and plates and stuff has been collected over time, and when they got a new sofa, maybe one of them broke but they didn't need a second one, and so they have like odd sofas, and it feels very just lovely to me. But the sofa that I decided to pair it with is one that we got from the high school years expansion pack, and currently it doesn't have a pillow on it, but I'm pretty sure I end up merging in like a little separate pillow onto that little love seat. In here as well I placed down a rug that we got from, I think it's the Horse Ranch DLC, and then we have like a little side table that's got quite an old TV on top of it, and then I placed down some paintings on top of that, which is from the Lovestruck expansion pack. Again, it's kind of playing into the idea of lots of like odd bits of furniture, odd and kind of like vintage photo frames. It's just so beautiful. But in that room I also ended up placing down a side table that we got from the Lovestruck expansion pack, and then placed down a few little like clutter pieces on top of it. I do also end up changing the curtain swatches in that room, because I initially placed down these curtains that we got from the high school years DLC in this beautiful cream swatch, which, don't get me wrong, beautiful, and I use that swatch throughout the rest of the house. But where I had the blue pillows on that sofa in that room, I decided to switch it out to be a cream and then a blue gradient swatch of the curtains. It's really pretty, you'll see it in the screenshots. But either way, moving over, as you would have seen, I just quickly changed the dining room chairs to be ones that we got from the 4 expansion pack, and now I've moved on and started decorating the first bedroom, which is going to be the distant mermaid mum's bedroom. Now, I'm not going to be making the mermaid mum an active member of his household unless you think I should, but I'm basically got the idea in my head of, if you've got the Growing Together DLC and you've got family members, or sometimes your Sims friends, or even just their neighbours, sometimes they'll randomly call them up and be like, look, I need a place to stay for a couple of nights, would you mind if I stay around your house? I'm imagining that kind of situation works this household, and so I imagine that 9 times out of 10, this is a completely vacant room, no one really comes in here, but when the mermaid mum is in town, this is the room that she might potentially stay in. So in here, I placed on the bed that we got from the Growing Together DLC, and then on the side table, I wanted to try and make as many references to mermaids in this room as I could possible, which, to be honest, we really ain't got that many build and buy items in the game, or even just like debug items that really references mermaids in the game. I really wish, and like literally desperate at this point, if the Sims team would ever revisit a pack refresh like what they did with the Spa Day game pack, they would kind of refresh the Island Living DLC, because the thing is, mermaids, I'm currently playing with one in my own personal household. They are fun, but they're not as fun as what they could be. There is a mod, by the way, called Expanded Mermaids 2.0 or something. I can't remember what it's called, but recently downloaded it, and it does mermaids justice, and it is so much fun. But I really want there to be some more mermaidy kind of items in the game, but unfortunately we don't really have that many, and so I just did the best that I could. In here I placed down a little seashell on the bedside table. If your Sims blow on that seashell, other mermaids would kind of like respond to it. And then there is a little side table in the corner that I placed down some like Sulani treasure on it. I placed down some Sulani necklaces. I placed down like seashells and just other bits and bobs that your Sims would find if they are a mermaid potentially. But also in that room I placed down like a get together wardrobe. I placed down, I think, a mirror as well, and then I think I pretty much just finished it off by placing down a painting that I actually got one of my Sims to pre-paint, because when it came around to decorating the house, by the way, I was really struggling for artwork. You might notice sometimes I just spend like 10 seconds just filtering through all the different paintings in the game, because we really don't have artwork in this kind of style. And so ages ago I basically got my Sims to come in and paint a ton of different paintings, saved them to my library, similar to what I've done with like the seashell decorations, and basically whenever I'm building I can just plonk them out onto the floor. And I had a painting that kind of related to the ocean in some sort of way, and so you would have seen I plonked it out onto the outside, picked some paintings, put them in my inventory, and then placed one down onto the wall. But either way, moving over, as you would have quickly just seen, I decorated the downstairs bathroom. Now normally when it comes around to decorating bathrooms in my Sims houses, I normally only ever show you the furnishing for one, but the upstairs bathroom doesn't end up having a shower, but the downstairs one does. And so I thought, you know, I'm just going to include it anyway. But you can see that I've now moved over and I started coming in and decorating the toddler's bedroom. So in here, I tried to decorate this bedroom similar to the way that I decorated the rest of the house. And I tried to do it for all the bedrooms, but I feel like I struggled in a way with the toddler's room in particular, because for a toddler's room, when it came around to artwork especially, I was really struggling. But you will see in a minute, I end up placing down some debug seashells that your Sims can find in the sand, and basically rotating them and putting them onto the wall to make it look like a decoration, like a wall decoration. I just love this idea, and I really wish I would have had this idea in the downstairs mermaid's bedroom, but at least this way it's a little bit different. But in here I decided to use the bed that we got from Eco Lifestyle, perfect for a toddler that lives in the world of Sulani, because on the end of this bed there's these little seashells decoration. It's so cutesy. But in here as well I placed down a little doll's house. The one that I use is from the Eco Lifestyle expansion pack. Must admit, we do have like 4 or 5 different doll's houses in the game, but whenever it comes around to decorating kids' bedrooms or toddlers' bedrooms, I always just opt for this one, just because I just like the look of it the best. And to me, it's more realistic. I mean, I don't imagine this family have got money bags coming out their ears. I imagine that they're not exactly tight for money, but they don't need to be spending massive amounts on a doll's house that their child is going to use for a number of years and then, you know, put it in the bin. And so yeah, I decided to use this one. And then next to it I placed down a little tiger teddy bear that, if you're curious, you can find it in the debug menu, and we got it from the 4 rent expansion pack. I'm pretty sure his name is like Tilbert or something. But on the bedside table next to the toddler bed, I placed down like a little wicker basket. I placed down a little lamp that looks like it's a moon, and then I also placed down some sort of like hand-me-down family heirloom box, and then I placed down a little toddler book on the top of it. I then also ended up placing down a little armchair on one side, and then I merged in what is meant to be a meditation cushion, but I just really like the look of it just being like a regular pillow in the game. And so I merged in, if you're curious, your Sims can still sit on that little armchair. And I like the idea of an evening when it's time for this toddler to go to sleep, her mum or dad puts her to bed and sits in that armchair and reads to her. But also in this room I ended up placing down a changing station, and then I also placed down a little teddy bear and then a kids toy box, which the kids toy box is a little bit more rough around the edges, a little bit more weathered, but again, that was kind of like the look that I was going for throughout the whole entire house. But you might have noticed the curtains that I placed down into the toddler's bedroom, they were like a blue and cream gradient. I end up changing the swatch to be like that in the living room. You know, when I said like I changed out the curtain swatches, I end up going for that swatch in the living room, and it tied in nicely with the boo pillows. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on into the next bedroom, which is Dwayne's bedroom. So like I already mentioned, I was imagining that Dwayne is the nephew of Liliana and Makara, and he basically came to stay one day when his mum was temporarily trying to figure out some sort of living situation for him. Like I said, I imagine that she lives in the ocean. She ain't got a roof over her head. She cannot be raising a child, because I imagine that he did used to live with his dad, who was a fisherman, which, by the way, completely forgot to mention. I liked the idea of Dwayne's dad meeting his mum, because he was out in the ocean one day. Maybe he was out at sea, really like far deep out, and it came across this mermaid, and maybe she sang a song to him, made him fall in love with her, and then Dwayne happened kind of situation. But in here, I decided to go for the bed that we got from the Jungle Adventure DLC, and then I tried to make it feel a little bit teenagery, but then still try and keep with the rest of the theme of the house. I used the same wallpaper that I've used throughout, but I use it in a bit of a different swatch. I then placed down some different posters onto the walls. Some of the ones that I've placed down are from the new Lovestruck DLC, and then on one side of the bed I sized up what is meant to be skateboards in the game. We got them from the Parenthood game pack, but I like the idea of them maybe being surfboards or something, and maybe Dwayne likes to surf on the weekends or something. Unfortunately, that isn't something that we've actually got in the game, which this is why I want an Island Living refresh. Like, if we could have a bigger extension onto mermaids, and mermaids could have some sort of ranking system like what we've got for werewolves and vampires and for spellcasters. I just feel like mermaids were done so dirtily, but if we could also have surfing implemented into the game of Island Living, that would just be an absolute dream. But yeah, I do imagine that if he could, he would surf. I did also place down a little lifeguard ring in his bedroom as well, because like I mentioned, he does have a job. He's a teenager, but he's a lifeguard. But also in that room, I ended up placing down the only one computer desk in the whole entire house. But I was thinking maybe he saved up his money that he does have from his job, and maybe he bought quite a battered computer. It's one of the cheapest ones that we got in the game, but I placed it down onto a tiny little desk unit. And then also in the corner, I don't know if you would have noticed, but I placed down that same Island Living armchair that I've used throughout the rest of the build, but then next to it I placed down a suitcase. But I was thinking that when he first initially moved in, that was what he brought with him. But then you might have noticed that over top of a suitcase I then placed in a spider web, because he's been here a while, it hasn't been used in a while, he's not going out, and so over time it's just kind of like collected dust, and now maybe a spider lives in the corner of his room or something. But either way, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on and I've started decorating the bathroom. So in here I decided to go for, in the end, a Jungle Adventure bathtub. Initially I was going to place down one that we got from the Sims 4 base game, but I liked the brown swatch of the one that we got from Jungle Adventure. But then in there as well I placed down a sink that we got from Horse Ranch, a base game toilet, and then a little shelving unit that we got from the Island Living DLC. Now, you would have seen it on the downstairs, but I didn't mention it because I was just blabbering on about the storyline for these Sims. But basically, this is a shelving unit that we got from the Island Living DLC, and honestly, I forget that we've got it in the game. I do wish it came in some more neutral swatches, like a blank white, a blank brown, and a blank, I say blank, just like a normal standard wood, because the wood that we got from the Island Living DLC, it's beautiful. It's kind of like this wood tone that's got multiple different shades of wood in it, and it is really pretty. But I find Island Living content, like the build and buy stuff, kind of hard to use in other houses that aren't built in this world. But you would have seen on that little shelving unit, I tried to make it into some sort of like bathroom cabinet. So I placed down extra towels in it, I placed down little toilet rolls, and then I also placed down a little tiny ducky, and then also some toys for the toddlers to play with when it's bath time. But quickly, you would have just seen me decorate the upstairs hallway. Again, I pulled out one of them paintings that I had pre-painted a while ago, but the one that I placed down on top of one of the little side tables, I just feel like it's just so perfect. It is this tiny little house, what looks to be on stilts over some sort of lake. It's not really an ocean, it doesn't really look like Sulani, but I feel like it perfectly fits in with this world. And so yeah, if you're wondering where that painting is from, it's just one that we've got that your Sims will paint in the game if they have quite high painting skill. But I placed down a little side table out there. But now moving over, I've now moved on into the last room in this house, which is the parents' bedroom. So in here, I decided to go for the horse ranch bed in this yellowy swatch, but I'm pretty sure at one point I debate using this bed and I try and switch it out to be something else. But you would see on a little side table, I placed down some debug books and I rotated some of them to make it look like they were standing upright. And you might notice one of the books that I placed down is a cooking book, and that is because I think in my save file I'm going to make it so Liliana, the mother of this household, is going to be a chef. Now when you enter a brand new save file, she is in the culinary career. I always really struggle saying that word, but she is in that line of work, if you want to put it that way. But she is meant to be a mixologist, which I like the idea of her being a chef. And so I'm thinking with her little herb garden that she's got, and I imagine she probably cooks up a right storm in the kitchen, I feel like a chef is a better suited career path for her. And so I purposely placed down a little cooking book on the bedside table. Makoa, who is the dad of this household, is in the conservationist. Oh, I probably said that wrong. Do you know what? I really struggle with some of the career names in the game, but he is in the land surveyor career, basically one of the careers that we got from the Island Living DLC. He likes to basically take care of the world and make sure that no one's chucking rubbish on the floor, and he likes to protect the sea life and stuff. And so I think for my save, that is perfectly suited for him, and so I'm going to keep his career as that. But in here, as you can see, I end up making somewhat of like a walk-in wardrobe, but in a little bit more of like a budget friendly way. I was going to place down some clothes onto the walls, but then it felt a little bit too fancy, a little bit too suburban family home, and so in the end I placed down a chest of drawers that we got from Island Living, a mirror, and then a little tiny chair in the corner. But other than that, I'm going to go around the room, finish it off by cluttering up this chest of drawers, and that is pretty much it. So anyway guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or you can search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content, then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedrunning video. Bye guys!